So there was this massive AI claim that totally blew up the tech world recently. The idea that an AI team built a fundamental piece of software completely on its own. But, how much of that was real and how much was just hype? Let's get into it.
It all kicked off with this headline from the AI company Anthropic. And look, on the surface, that sounds like an absolutely monumental achievement, a C compiler. I mean, that's one of the most foundational, critical tools in all of computer science. And get this, the price tag was just as jaw-dropping. The whole experiment cost only $20,000 in API fees. To put that in perspective, that's a tiny fraction of what it would cost to hire even one human engineer for a project this complex. And that, right there, is why it raised so many eyebrows. So here's how they said it worked, and it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? A team of 16 AI agents got access to a shared code repository. From there, they just went to work. They checked out code, claimed tasks, wrote solutions, and even fixed conflicts with each other's code, all without a human manager calling the shots. This was really presented as the future of making software. And when you look at the results on paper, wow, they seem incredible. This AI team cranked out a 100,000-line program that could compile huge, real-world projects like the Linux kernel. And then, the ultimate test, the one every programmer knows and loves. Could it compile and run the classic video game, Doom? And it did! A huge success, right?
Well, not so fast. You know how it is. Once developers and the community actually got their hands on it, things started to look a little different. The very first program anyone ever learns to write, a simple "Hello World," it failed to compile without a human tweaking it first. This comment just perfectly captures that feeling of surprise and maybe a little disappointment.
All right, so let's dig in here and take a closer look at the successes versus the reality, because that gap between the big announcement and what people actually found, that's where the real story is. Okay, so this table just lays it all out. The claim was it was built from scratch. The reality? Not so much. It was actually relying on a human-made compiler, GCC, for some really critical parts. It wasn't a clean room build because the AI had been trained on pretty much every open-source compiler on the internet. It wasn't fully autonomous because a human had to build this massive support system around it. And the final product? It was way less efficient than the existing tools. The developer community, as you can probably imagine, did not hold back. They reacted really strongly, especially to that clean room claim. See, in software, that term has a super specific meaning. It means you've never, ever seen the original code you're trying to recreate. This developer's reaction kind of sums up the feeling of betrayal a lot of people felt. And this analogy from a critic just nails it. Anthropic's argument was, hey, the AI didn't have live internet access for those 2 weeks, so it's clean room. But what critics pointed out is that the AI's entire brain was literally formed by studying that code. It's like memorizing a book cover to cover, then closing it and claiming you wrote it from scratch just because you turned off the lights. So this led a lot of people to argue that what we're seeing here isn't real creation, It's not reasoning. It's more like a super advanced form of pattern matching. It's just decompressing and restitching knowledge that was already baked into its training data that was built on decades of human work. And then there was the code itself, the quality. You had Anthropic on one hand, modestly calling it reasonable, and then you had the developers who actually looked at the 100,000 lines of code saying, well, something else entirely. They found it inefficient, poorly built, and just plain weird, what one person bluntly just called slop. So let's get back to that word autonomous. What did it really mean here? Well, it turns out it needed a whole lot of human help. The lead researcher had to build this huge custom infrastructure, this scaffolding, just to keep the AI agents from going off the rails. For example, at one point, all 16 agents got stuck on the exact same bug, and he had to step in and use the human-made compiler as a sort of oracle to give them the right answer so they could get moving again. And that $20,000 price tag, the one that sounded so amazing, it comes with some giant asterisks. It completely ignores the billions of dollars it took to train the AI model in the first place, not to mention the decades of human work from the open source community that created the very compilers and tests this whole project was standing on. Okay, so after all of that, you're probably wondering, was this whole thing just a bust? Was it all just marketing smoke and mirrors, or was there something genuinely new and innovative happening here? And the answer, maybe surprisingly, is yes.
Buried under all the hype, there were some genuinely cool things going on. They came up with new ways to use tools like Git to get a team of AIs to work together. They discovered some clever engineering tricks to babysit an AI team and keep it on track. And maybe most importantly, they proved that something like this, which would have been total science fiction just a year ago, is now actually possible. So the final takeaway? The truth is somewhere in the middle. This wasn't the moment that human programmers became obsolete, not by a long shot. What it was, though, was an important, fascinating research milestone. Think of it as an interesting lab demo that gives us a peek at where this tech is going, but it's definitely not a finished product ready to replace decades of human engineering. Which leaves us with this final and maybe most important thought, one that the researcher himself brought up. As AI start writing more and more of our code, we are walking into a totally new world, one where humans might be deploying these complex systems that they don't fully understand themselves. And that's a question we're all going to have to answer, probably sooner than we think. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.